Good afternoon or good evening. We are here at the salon during our quarantine time, and I'm here with Allie. Allie, how you doing this morning?
I'm tired.
You're tired. She hasn't had her coffee yet. Well, I hope everybody got a chance to check out the first video, which was the haircut, and I promised a follow-up coloring video. So today we have Allie here for a highlight retouch. And Allie, give us some insight on your last couple highlights that you've been getting done. Because to me, when we look at her color, interior-wise, it's pretty solid, right? And that's not what you're seeing right now. So from what I understood, we had a conversation previously about what direction she wanted her hair to go into, which was what?
Well, I've been highlighted the same the past couple times, so I feel like it's just created a super solid look. So as it grows out, I don't like how solid it's growing out, but I don't mind a little bit of depth at the root yet.
Perfect. So those are exactly key words that we need to pay attention to, right? So she said solid. So what line in our world is solid? Well, it's horizontal, right? So if you look at the application, we can definitely see that there's horizontal outgrowth, right? So if we look at the interior of this, we can also see that the lines are done pretty horizontal, which is great because she's got fine hair. So typically when someone has fine hair and you want the style to look a little bit more on the thicker and fuller side, you tend to do things a little bit more solid. In this situation, she also mentioned that she wanted some bolder pieces in the front, which we call those money pieces right now. So right now, she has no money pieces. Not because she didn't pay the money to get them, it's just that sometimes when we get into a mode of highlighting, we get to a certain point where things become solid, and that's exactly what's going on today. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna show you a technique that when someone comes into the salon and they don't want what they see going on here, how you can soften up what's going on so that it looks flawless when it grows out. Would you all like that? Yes, you would. So, give me some insight. What are you currently using for shampoo? Because it's very important that if I'm gonna have a relationship with this person, let's go back to this. Let's go back to the time that you were on a date, right? You needed to go on a first date, you needed to meet that person and find out as much stuff as you could about that person in order to realize if you wanted to go on a second date with them, right? So if I'm seeing Allie for the first time and highlighting her, which truly I've never highlighted you before, so this is gonna be quite exciting, because she does have dark under outgrowth, and that's the hardest color to lift up. So she is using currently what right now?
I'm using Hydrate from Pureology.
Hydrate from Pureology. So is that something that you've been using for quite some time?
Yes.
Okay, so it has been. So do you have any kind of protein that's going back into your regimen? Because essentially what's happening is we're going through, and when we highlight the hair, we break down bonds that are made up inside your hair. And if we don't repair those bonds, the hair ends up feeling like straw, essentially, because it doesn't have that same pigment that darker hair does. So, Hydrate is fantastic. It's a color-safe brand, as natural as they can be. But if she's not on a specific regimen for what we're going to be doing today, the results aren't going to be exactly what I want them to be, because her ends are pretty icy. Her hair is in fairly good condition. So what I would suggest, Allie, is I would suggest to go home and use the new Redken that came out. It's called Split End Recovery, or something on those lines. It's new, it's great, it's got the pH bonder, and it's got the biotin in there to help make the hair, grow consistently. So, Redken Extreme, put aside what you have now, which is the Hydrate, and then that will be your base to repairing what we're gonna be doing today. So let's jump right back into the application and how you're going to be sectioning off for this. So Allie, is this typically where you would part?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if she's parting this way, what my sectioning is going to be is it's gonna be all zigzags, right? So if I'm gonna have Allie tilt her head down, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through on her part and make little zigzags going all the way back to the crown area of her head. So what that would look like would be like this. So we're doing small little zigzags, and the reason why we're doing small zigzags is to make sure that we get as much coverage as we can, because again, we're doing everything on a diagonal, so everything is going to be very, very well blended. So we gotta make sure that our sectioning is small enough. And now if I take bigger zigzags, what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna get more of that whole balayage effect, which is what I've done at the academy several times. So if you guys have seen that, that's fantastic. But this is essentially what your parting is gonna look like. Now when we get into the side of the application here, typically what we want is we want the top high pieces to be more of the highs, and the brighter pieces, which we mixed up some Blonde Dimensions 40 volume and 30 volume. So the lower pieces in here, which I'll show you in a second, is gonna be the 30, and the higher peaks are gonna be the 40. So it looks a little bit softer when we blend that out. So we want the peaks to be as wide as the foil. So everything from typically from corner of eyebrow all the way back to the back corner of the head, we're gonna section off. And we're gonna section that off horizontally so I can kind of see what's going on the side sections here, so I can show you what that's gonna look like here in a second. So if we turn her to the side here, so I have a horizontal section to the back corner, and what we're gonna do here is we're gonna use these corner of the eyebrow here as a guideline, and the comb's gonna be horizontal, and we're gonna make horizontal zigzags. So horizontally come through here, the comb is pressed against the head, and we're zigzagging on a diagonal so that we can go through and throw some foils in the side as well. So side profile wise will all look like that. This is exactly what you're going to be seeing in here. You're going to be seeing the zigzags that continue all the way forth into the back of the head. And the mountain peaks there just create a little bit of softness for yourself when you're actually doing this. All right, so my first piece that I'm gonna do is closer to her face, and I want those to be a little bit brighter. So the main thing that we wanna make sure that we're not doing is that we're not painting through the blends that we've already painted through, because that will damage the integrity quite a bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in on a diagonal and using this high peak as our guideline, and go ahead and do yourself a favor and clip away what you're not working on, just because that's going to be a little bit more challenging to know what kind of hair you're going to pick up here. So we're going to do a slash through the first one. Reason being is that it's pretty weak in the front, so if I do a weave, it's not going to go through and it's going to blend it in way too much here. So the first one we're going to do is a very tiny slash, and that'll just allow us to have a little bit more of that money piece in the front, because we're going to continue that all the way up the hairline. But for now, we're going to work on the sides. So we got Blonde Dimensions 40 volume mixed up for the front. And I'm going to do about every other foil here with the Blonde Dimensions 40 volume here. So I prefer to use a smaller brush here, and we're going to paint, start, and create ourselves a guideline closer to the scalp here by painting down horizontally. And once you got that worked in a little bit, take the tip of your brush and go through and just work that closer to the scalp. Now our goal is not to get it butt up to the scalp. That'll cause you to have a little bit more of the bleeding lines going on there, and we've all experienced that, and we don't like that. So then we'll go ahead and foil, lock that baby up, and then we're on to the next section here. So the next section is going to be my high point. So there's high point and then there's low points that are in there. Now on the low points, if you decide that you want some depth into that, what you can go through and do is you can go through and paint a low light through it. So the next high point we have here is going to be a weave, and that's going to be a weave of the Blonde Dimensions 30 volume. And we also put a little bit of pH bonder in that. And I know a lot of people say pH bonder slows the processing down. Well, it does a little bit, but then just bump your developer up a little bit higher. And when you're working in situations like this, you want to make sure that you have protection first, because if I do this and I don't know the history of her and I don't go through and put bonder in it, it's not going to be a pretty result when you go through and tone that. So this next one is going to be painted on with BD 30 volume. And this one, we want to paint as close as we can to the scalp, because that's going to be our blended pieces that go in here. So again, we'll start by painting horizontally, closest we can towards the foil line here. And then we'll go through and flip our brush over and do that vertically through the top. And to make sure that we're not going through the ends. I mean, obviously it's impossible to not get some on the blondes, but make sure that we don't run it all the way through the ends there. So every other one, we have 40 volume, 30 volume, 40 volume, 30 volume. all the way around. We can see that they're diagonally stacked on top of one another, going all the way around the head there. You can see where my previous guidelines were there. So now I'm gonna head on to the front part of this highlight here. So now that we're on the top section of the head here, typically I like to start in the back of the head just because it's a left alone area. And what I mean by that is that this area back here hardly ever gets highlighted, and it's a little bit more on the stronger side, I would think. The hair in the front, we're always pulling back up in a ponytail, so it's putting a lot of tension on the hair. So if I start in the front with my product here and I lighten it, and to get it light right away, I'll either have to go through and take that off right away or take it off right away. So we're gonna start in the back, and again, what we're gonna be looking for is our points, our mountain peaks, right? So the first section I take is going to be the first peak here. And what we wanna do is, if we put diagonal towards the face, we gotta understand that that's gonna lean everything, all that highlighting towards her face. So if that's what you want, make sure your diagonal is going forward. If that's not what you want and you want the weight and the lightness to go away from the face, we want to make sure that we go through and put them diagonal back. So I'm choosing to go diagonal forward because who doesn't love a little bit of extra facial framing? So our first one we're going to start with is going to be the bright piece, which is going to be a solid slash here. So we're going to take a very fine section. We want to make sure that the section is no bigger than the width of the foil here. And then a main thing I like to do is I like to round the head with the comb. What does that mean? It means the tip of the comb goes flat down on one corner and rounds the other corner out. What that does is it allows you to have a little bit of tightness in here, and the corners will get into the foil a lot easier here. So again, what we're gonna wanna do is paint horizontally, not up to the scalp here, but just about 1 inch below the actual regrowth line there, because we have to make sure that the hair stays on the actual foil. And then what we're gonna do again is flip our brush up vertically, and we're gonna go through and paint as close as we can to the scalp, making sure that we don't go past the foil line. And then we're gonna go ahead and fold that up. So our next piece, again, we're doing alternates of 40 and 30 volume. Doesn't matter what brand of lightener you use. But the next one's gonna be a weave. And we wanna make sure that we constantly switch up our techniques here because we don't want anything to be solid here. So again, we're taking about tiny weaves going through here. You know, if you always are known to do solid techniques, maybe weave them up and change the way that you place the foils in there. That's the only thing that's gonna make everything look different here. Now, again, we wanna stay away from the ends there because we don't wanna go through and re-damage those ends that you spent all that time repairing. And that's essentially what the top's gonna look like. So once I get closer to the front, I'm gonna go through and show you how those sections are done, because the last 3 pieces I'm gonna do are all gonna be solid. The reason being is I want it to be a little bit heavier around the face. So we'll go through and we'll fold that up. And that's what it's looking like so far, people. We are back in the frontal sections here. So I left the last 3 sections in here on a diagonal to be solid. Now I did it solid with a lightener that with 40 volume to it. So we're gonna do slashes. The key thing to this is making sure that you take solid, tiny, thin, see-through sections here. Otherwise we're not gonna saturate enough. So we'll put the first one in. Again, we're using lightener with 40 volume. Paint as close as we can to the scalp without touching. And the key to this is just making sure you take very thin slices, because if you take too big of a piece, we're not going to saturate completely through, and then you're going to get splotchiness here. So because of the video, my foils will all be going back, but in these first couple ones, they're going to be going forward, just so that you guys can see how I'm applying this here. So there we have one. And I usually say it's about 3 foils in the front. If you have any more than that, you're gonna make it 2 90s where, you know, the solid pieces on top, and then you see that outgrowth. The main thing to this, you guys, is making sure that we have no outgrowth lines. So the weaving that you did in the back was to blend in her outgrowth. The solid slashes were to give her some some excitement into her hairstyle when she's looking at herself in the mirror. I mean, we're all pretty depressed getting up in the morning and knowing that we're not able to go out and do anything because of the quarantine. But you know what? Sit here with me, do some styling and some cutting and some coloring, and then we'll have a quarantine after. But let's all continue to keep learning. So there you have it. There is the frontal section of what's going on here. We got about one more piece left to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this and do the other side here, and then I will go ahead and check back in with you guys when we go through to tone it. We are back at the shampoo bowl after about 40 minutes of sitting and waiting. Second step we put on was the pH bonder to help kind of repair those bonds as we continue to tone this out here. So as we can see at the base here is we got a little bit of yellow going on. And that's the last stage that you're going to lift to before you can go through and put any kind of ashy toner onto it. So today what we mixed up was a little bit of 09P from Redken Shades. We did about 1/4 of an ounce of that, and then we did the new 10VV, which I believe is Lavender Ice, which is an amazing toner. We also diluted it with a little bit of Crystal Clear, just because some of that ends might take a little bit faster than what the outgrowth did. So we're just gonna work on that, and we'll see you back in a second. Hello, we just got done blow drying the hair and toning everything out, and here are your final results. So if we go ahead and take a spin here, you can still see, if she tilts her head to the side here, how you have dark at the scalp. And what you're allowing this to do is allowing some of that dark to grow into here. So a lot of people that like those shadow roots, well guess what? If she's got some dark in there that you can utilize, go through and weave in and do that technique that I just showed you, because that blends. You can definitely see where the peaking happens there. So I'm gonna have you tilt your head forward now and take a peek. You can see how everything is really well blended. Now turn around, do a nice spin for everybody. Now what I want you to do is tilt your head back, because everyone always asks about the back, and is there any bleeders, or is there any areas that need to be hidden? Well, guess what?
I love how it turned out. It was yet different, but yet I love it, so.
And if I can add something, I think a lot of times when we go through and we don't see the foiling butt up to the scalp, and you still see some of that dark in there, I think that mentally for the client, or even in this situation, is that I need, in order to get my money's worth out of it, get every single piece and get it as close to you as you can to the scalp. But I think that was maybe about 10 years ago or so. So, she asked me as I was blow drying her hair out, can you do the sides a little bit more? Well, guess what? Yes, I can do the sides. Did I want to do everything in one application? No. The reason being is that I want to build her up, especially with going this light, build her up to that level. So this time we did everything diagonally, and as I was explaining to her, next time we go back through and do this, we're going to go through horizontally, because we want to change that application up so we get more coverage. So in her sense, she gets to wear something different for about 6 weeks until she comes back into me to get another application done. So that's when we alter it, and doing those two applications together, one diagonal and one horizontal the next time, you're gonna get a very well blended highlight essentially. So if you guys like what you're seeing, continue to keep watching, and we will see you soon. Take care, stay corona free.